ויגדת על בנך ביום ההוא לאמור בעבור זה עשה אדוני לי בצאתי ממצרים.
In every generation, each of us must know we're on our way to freedom. Our story is our own. Teach it to your children. And on that very day, Lord God has set me free and set me on my way. I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
to freedom land.
freedom land.
I'm on my way.
On my way
Freedom land.
freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
Freedom land. Yeah. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. I'm on my way.
on my way.
I won't turn back.
I won't turn back.
I'm on my way.
On my way
I won't turn back.
I won't turn back.
I'm on my way.
On my way
Turn back.
I won't turn back.
I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. I asked my mother
Ask my mother
to go with me.
go with me.
I asked my father
Ask my father
yeah. I asked my sister
Ask my sister to
yeah. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. Now, if you don't go,
If you don't go,
don't stop me now.
don't stop me now.
If you don't go,
Go,
stop me now.
don't stop me now.
If you don't go,
Don't stop me now. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
Freedom land, yeah.
Freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way to freedom land. Way, oh, yes, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. Oh, yes, I'm on my
Well, thanks for starting us off, Jonathan. Does anybody know what he started us off with? I know
What
you
that
know.
was?
What was that?
It's from the Passover Haggadah.
You didn't let them answer the question.
Oh, jeez. Oh, wait. Let's start over.
Okay, does anybody know?
All seated now.
That's right. Okay, it's from the...
And it was years and years of friendship that led us to the recording of a CD called Let My People Go, which is a series of conversations over years of our own heritages, both us and Jonathan, and becoming friends, but then also wanting to deepen the friendship and really just get into some substance about where we came from. And of course, the way we got into that substance was really through music, but the music wasn't really quite enough. Jonathan and I actually met on a basketball court. Jonathan, we were at, you imagine this, a basketball court at the Omega Institute.
Oh my God!
And we ended up playing on the same team on one Sunday, and just checking in with each other, you know, and during downtime between games, we found out that we were living very close to each other in Philadelphia, and I asked Jonathan what he was doing, and he said, well, I'm actually becoming a rabbi. And I said, oh, interesting. And he explained that he was becoming a Reconstructionist rabbi. I had no idea what that meant. And he asked me what I was doing. Oh, Reconstruction gets a couple of hand claps. Well, you know, it was about, we were living 20 minutes from each other, and our connection was basketball. But we understood that our connection deepened very quickly because both of us were about the work of peace and justice. And I didn't know how Jonathan had come to that. He didn't know how I had come to that. We did both know that we loved music.
And basketball.
And basketball. Not necessarily in that order, depending on the day.
Now it's interesting because in looking at the description for this time together, and Jonathan and I were just talking about it, we said, that's not what we sent in.
It's okay.
But in some ways, it actually is. Because there are many different ways to look at the history and uses of the music of the civil rights movement. You know, it was a group of people that wound up coming together and being allies, but not everybody was coming from the same place or from the same spaces, even though people eventually were able to find ways to work together. So today, the particular lens that we're going to use to look at that music of the civil rights movement is through the lens of the spiritual, the lens of telling stories that are based on the idea that we're not meant to be enslaved, we're not meant to be oppressed, but in addition to the people that help us out, there is a wider reality that also supports us along our way. And for many of the African Americans, you know, not all, but for many of the African Americans involved in the civil rights movement, you know, that was the way of looking at things, of saying that we are here, we are marching, we are working, but we are also supported by a divine reality. And, you know, did that make it always easy for everyone to be together, working together? Absolutely not. Not even just within the African American community. People like Diane Nash. Diane Nash, who's known to be one of the leaders of the Freedom Rides. Some folks say she absolutely saved the Freedom Rides. Diane Nash grew up as Black and Catholic. And when she got involved with people who were Black and Baptist and Black and Methodist, they looked at her and said, "What?
What the heck is that?
What the heck is that?" And they said, you know, that on Tavis Smiley, she did an interview and she said, you know, they used to laugh at me because they would say, you know, we're saying, I'm on my way, hallelujah. And you're probably saying, I'm on my way, Hail Mary, you know. So, I mean, there were, and, you know, she said that in jest, but I know that there were tensions in there too. And those kinds of things were happening. Now, what was going on in Jewish communities that were part of the civil rights movement? What kinds of things?
Well, most of the Jews, some of you here, I'm sure, who were involved in the civil rights movement, maybe some of you were marching, you know, maybe some of you went down to Freedom Summer, I don't know. Mostly were coming from a secular, liberal place, where Judaism wasn't directly informing your values. But one of the great inspirations of the civil rights movement was a rabbi named Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was one of those remarkable souls, a survivor of the Holocaust, someone who bridged the traditional world. He was raised to be a Hasidic master, but left that and got a PhD in Berlin in the 1930s in theology and philosophy. A remarkable man who, the best way to describe him was his title at the Jewish Theological Seminary, which was Professor of Jewish Mysticism and Ethics. You can cross that bridge, the bridge from spirit to what it means to do the right thing. Those aren't separate realms. Heschel embodied it. He was close friends with King. And there's a famous picture of him marching with King and Selma. And when he wrote King a letter afterwards, he said, I felt that my legs were praying. And he was a remarkable man. It's been my inspiration, as a person who has religious feelings, that bridge is a natural bridge to cross. That, you know, as Martin Luther King said, quoting the pastor, the abolitionist pastor in the 1850s, who said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. That came out of preaching. right? And it's also easy to forget that Martin Luther King was a reverend. So part of our goal is to cross the false divide between believers, whatever that might mean, and activists, right? Activists all believe something, or you wouldn't be getting out of bed every morning. Something in you has a sense, as King and Heschel quoting each other said, because they read each other's writings, that what is isn't what ought to be, and what ought to be must be, right? Where do we humans get that sense that there's an ought out there? Where's that come from? And it doesn't. The answer doesn't matter. The question, it's that we all have that ability to feel inspired, to inspire others to be inspired. And that's, so when we explored the story of the Exodus through our shared Passover Seders, the story of the Exodus is a totally inspirational story. It's that there is a power in the universe that insists that the children be free. That's an incredible inspiration. And look how the African American community took it and ran with it.
Ran with it indeed. You know, you have slaves who, for the most part, are people in slavery, I should say, who could not read, could not write. They were not educated. That does not mean they were stupid. They had education, they had culture, they were an oral tradition. But they hear these stories when they are either forced to go to church or when they happen to go to church. And they hear these stories of these people who indeed were slaves and who longed for freedom and who had this leader who led them from slavery out into freedom. And they look at that and they say, that's our story. And they begin to fashion songs and stories around that reality. And they also begin to fashion a movement for themselves that uses those songs and those stories in both very spiritual and philosophical ways, but also very practical ways. And that is where we get the codes of the Underground Railroad.
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand.
Let my people go. Let my people go. Thus spake the Lord, bold Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll strike your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
No more shall they in bondage be.
Let my people go.
And soon may all humankind be free.
Let my people Let my people
There's a question that Reggie and I are asked many times. People say, how was it that people from Africa who found themselves enslaved took up the religion of the master? And the answer is, they didn't. They didn't. Week after week, many were being preached to from a writing in Christian scriptures that says, slaves, obey your master. They say, we hear that every week, seems like. But they were understanding the story that says, there's a God that sees and hears your oppression and wants you to be free.
Exodus says, the voice says to Moses in the burning bush, I have heard the suffering of the children of Israel, and I know their pain. That's the voice of that God.
Now, there are many ways to think about that. You know, because like, we're not here to convert anybody. It's not going to be an altar call at the end of this. But think about it. These days, as people are marching in the streets and holding up signs that say, Black Lives Matter, what that is about is saying we need to find a way to see and hear the oppressions of people that are different from us. That's a long story. It's an old story. But to see, hear, and understand that people who are different from us are oppressed, and they might be oppressed in ways that we don't understand. Now, I've got some friends, somebody said this to us just a couple weeks ago. I don't see color. I just say people are people. Now, we were in the middle of dinner, so I had to kind of calm myself.
You had to be nice.
I had to be nice. What I wanted to say to her was, then to me, as a friend and an ally, you are useless. Because if I'm walking down the street with you and the police come up to the both of us, they are not going to treat us the same way. Now, there's an incredible story from two students that I know from Union Theological Seminary. And it's the story of both of them being arrested at the same time, at the same place, when they were marching for freedom back in, I think, November. And the white young man was told, now, you know, you got to watch out what you're doing, so go on home. And the black young man, these two are friends, colleagues, and students together at Union Seminary. And the black young man was told, we're arresting you and we're putting you in jail. Now, the fact that they're already friends meant that they could tell their story together for the New York Times and say, if you don't believe there's any kind of difference, and if you don't want to see color, just look at what happened to the two of us when we were arrested side by side. So it's about saying, you know, whether you want to put the divine on it or not, we need to see and hear and understand the oppressions that we all are facing. And that's what these stories and these songs are all about.
Can I share something? Yeah. You can leave God out of this. It doesn't matter at all to me. Honest. Those who know me know that. But my friendship with Kim and Reggie has been one of the greatest blessings of my life because of who they are, but also because it allowed me finally to investigate with a close friend what their experience is like. I hadn't had that opportunity growing up. I just never had the opportunity. And you know how epiphanies can happen at the most ordinary moments. Reggie and I were about to do a show at a summer camp. And the two of us drive in this happens to you so often you may not remember, Reg. But I'd never gotten to see it. So we come up to the entrance of the summer camp, and the guard looks at us and then lifts up the gate, and we go in, and Reggie said, "Did you see how he was looking at me?" And I said, "No." And that was just the moment the light bulb went on for me. It wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been fortunate enough to be your friend. Mm-hmm. I just never would have been close enough to somebody to get it. But I've never forgotten since then. So it's this long process for me of awakening, of standing in a friend's shoes. It's just, and I'm learning all the time, but boy, am I happy I'm learning. And the only way I could do it was by having friends who are different than me. It's the only way I could do it.
That really, in so many ways, was the experience of the civil rights movement. As you know, many of the people who came to the movement didn't always understand why they were there. There was this driving passion, there was a driving desire. Some of it was, even for the black community, really, in that time. My church, the church that I grew up in, was not a political church. As a matter of fact, we were almost anti-political. There are those churches that say, we are here on earth to serve God and to save people, and our real investment is in heaven, which is where I was coming from. So we watched.
You were coming from heaven, right?
Stamped. So in my youth, we basically were being preached that, and it was, what was happening here? Well, you may suffer, but it's okay because 15 blocks away was Zion Baptist Church with Reverend Leon Sullivan. I don't know if any of you have heard of Reverend Leon Sullivan, but he was a pastor, black pastor in Philadelphia in those years. And Reverend Leon Sullivan was more aligned with he was kind of between King and Malcolm X. Interesting juxtaposition. What he said basically was, we are going to do everything that we can to be responsible for our freedom, but we are going to protest, and we are going to be a presence, and we're going to, get in people's faces. He led a boycott of Tasty Cake Cake Company.
Yeah, whoa, indeed. Tasty Cakes.
It's hard to resist.
He announced at one point that since Tasty Cake would not hire black workers or drivers, that those of us in the black community were not to eat Tasty Cake of any kind. Butterscotch crimpets, Tasty Cake crumpets, Tandy Takes. You see where I'm going with this? I mean to tell you, in the black community, Tasty Cake was holy. So when he announced this, and all the ministers said, because he was a leader, and all the ministers said, yes, indeed, we're getting on board. And so even in my church, the non-political church, they said, okay, the boycott's on, we're not eating Tasty Cake. And we all kind of looked around and said, God, help us.
That's when you really prayed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was a sacrifice for sure.
But the point I'm trying to make is that that even in the black community there was dissension, there was division, that maybe this wasn't such a great way to go or that wasn't such a great way to go. And now we're introducing other people, people who are not like us. Now we have
white people?
Well, white people, yeah. But we have this long tradition and history of having those in the abolitionist movement who were not like us, who, for whatever their reasons, decided that Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. And so it was in those moments, we have that to lean upon, and then we have the Jewish stories that tell us that there were other people who went through this, and they rose up, and they had this man named Moses. Well, we got Moses too, we got Harriet Tubman.
That's right.
And she becomes Moses.
That's right.
And she is our icon. And so we bring that forward, and all through the Reconstruction and through the early 1900s and all, that is the message. And we arrive at this place in the 1950s and 60s when we're now coalescing and we are looking for allies, and the stories connect. When I first met Jonathan and we began to have these conversations about our communities and all of that, we appreciated each other, but some of those conversations were very difficult. They were very, very difficult. And one of the things I loved about Jonathan was that I knew from a very, very early time in our friendship that he was, I'll say this, my mother plays, no bullshit.
I learned that from my mother. She's the no bullshit lady all the time, my mom.
I'd seen him take on instances of oppression, really, in our basketball community. And that was actually between men and women. And there was an incident, that we were in a game and some of the guys decided that they could lord over the women who were in the game because they had more strength, more speed or whatever. And the next week we came in and Jonathan said to me, I knew I had an ally here. He came to me and he said, did you notice last week that there was some friction going on and some things going on with the guys, taking advantage of the women? I said, yeah, I did notice that. And he said, well, maybe we can, you remember this stuff? He said, maybe we can, the two of us, make a pact that if that happens tonight, we stop the game. And I said, all right, I'm on that. The guys came in, and before the game started, Jonathan went over to the two guys who were the offending parties and said, pardon me, but last week, and before the game started, those were the kinds of spirits that joined the civil rights movement. When I asked some of the Freedom Riders and some of the folks who went to Freedom Summer why they went, many of them just said, I don't really know, but I know it wasn't right, what was happening. So that's why I had to be there. And all of my family said, you can't go because those people, I said, those are my people. So that's the connection that has developed. And in all of that, our shared stories and our shared music have lifted us to a place where that could then form and become a deeper community.
Now, sometimes the music wasn't shared, but we would make connections between them.
Right.
And so we were sitting around the table, and it wasn't particularly Passover, it was just lunch, So we were eating lunch together, and Jonathan...
Always good to have food.
Always. And you started telling stories about your family.
Right. I was talking about Ellis Island and how all of my ancestors, all my grandparents, anyone who got out before they were murdered by the Nazis, came through Ellis Island. It was closed in 1923. Actually, so the ones who got out in 39 didn't come in that way. And what the Statue of Liberty meant to me as a result of the stories I'd heard, and about the famous sonnet that sits at the base of the Statue of Liberty by Emma Lazarus, who was a Jewish American poet who was busy. She was a Sephardic Jew who had been in the country longer, was busy helping the Eastern European Jews enter the Golden Land, enter America. And I was just saying, it says, give me you're tired, you're poor. My name is Mother of Exiles. And then I looked at, and then we come here, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And then I looked at Kim and Reggie and went, oh, you didn't come in through Ellis Island. It was like, and that led into one of the deepest conversations we ever had, and a merging of some songs. Like the brazen giants of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sun-washed, sunset gates shall stand, sea-washed gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand,
command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Restless mention of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside that charcoal dim.
We can sing it together, right?
Door.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the road.
Now, we grew up singing that song in school.
And some of you did. It was by Irving Berlin. A show he wrote called Lady Liberty. And his name was Izzy Balin. He came in through Ellis Island when he was 10 years old.
And as we were listening to that song and singing that song, sitting there at lunch that day, we started thinking of another song. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. Now, we heard a story, and I guess we didn't really know this story, but it's a story of the person that eventually became Rabbi Art Waskow. And I guess we learned this story when we were in the midst of working on this CD.
It's on the CD.
Yeah.
I just saw, do any of you know Arthur Waskow? Arthur Waskow was, gosh, he testified at the Chicago 7 trial, and he was there when Washington was burning, and his epiphany as a secular radical Jew. He's still a radical Jew. He's just not so secular anymore. He eventually became a rabbi. He's over 80 now, and I just saw him just 2 weeks ago. He's been a teacher of mine for a long time. He was watching the blacks rioting in Washington, D.C. after King's assassination. And it was Passover. And as a matter of fact, going back to Heschel and King, Martin Luther King had been invited to Rabbi Heschel's house for Passover and had accepted, and they were looking forward to it, but he was murdered 10 days before Passover. Another irony, since he said, I've seen the promised land, but I'm not going to get there with you. he knew he was quoting scripture there. Anyhow, Arthur saw the army rounding up the blacks in Washington and said to himself, that's Pharaoh's army. It was 1968, right? That's Pharaoh's army. That's a lot of us would feel it. And at that point, he said, wait, I know this story. And it's what propelled him into Jewish study, interestingly enough. And then he tells the story on our CD of being at the 1964 Democratic Convention, helping the Mississippi Freedom Party as a young congressional aide.
It's a great story. He talks about being there and, you know, as a congressional aide. He was being sent all over to do all kinds of things. And when the controversy erupted that the Mississippi Freedom Party was there and demanding seats, then, of course, as you know, the consternation went out because, LBJ decided this wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And he sent word to his various operatives that they were to stop this at every case. But, of course, process and procedure being what it was, they actually needed people to hear out the case. And if you've seen those films, they are very, very powerful. Meanwhile, King is there, and he'd broken his leg.
Yep.
Right, so he's on crutches, right?
And they have him sort of sequestered outside of the convention center, out in the heat.
It's 100 degrees in Atlantic City.
And what they're doing is they are bringing people from the committee out for King to lobby for the Mississippi Freedom Party to give them a seat. And so Art Wasco talks about the fact that he's bringing folks out one by one, and they're to meet with King, and they're there, and King is, you know, passionately trying to advocate and talk, and he's watching this whole thing happen. He also heard Fannie Lou Hamer sing, "Go Tell It on the Mountain, Let My People Go," and how powerful that was for him. Again, music, changing hearts.
And that was one of those other times when he said to himself, I recognize that story. That's my story.
Right, and he said, in his beautiful telling of this story, he says that finally they were offered a compromise. They could have 2 seats in the delegation. And Fannie Lou Hamer stood up and said,
I ain't come all this way for no 2 seats.
when we didn't come all this way for 2 seats, when all of us is tired.
The powerful moment there, of course, also is that Fannie Lou Hamer went on TV. They were televising the hearings. And she went on TV and gave, if you have not seen the speech, go on YouTube and watch it. It is said that in the Oval Office, of all of the people who were in Atlantic City, the one that LBJ feared the most was Fannie Lou Hamer, because she was the real deal.
Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain, let my people go. Go tell it, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountains to let my people go. Ooh, those children dressed in red, let my people go. Well, they must be the ones Bob Moses led. Let my people go. Go tell it, go tell it on the mountains, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountains to let my people sing it again. Now go tell it on the mountains, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountains to let my people go.
Who were those people dressed in black? Must be the hypocrites are turning back. There was so much tension in the movement, and as you know, after the Mississippi Freedom Summer and the march in Selma, there were some difficult conversations within SNCC and the forming organizations that decided that there needed to be a break. And that actually many felt that for the movement to really go forward, then black folks would have to really organize and step up, and they were already organized, they'd have to step up in a different way for themselves, and the nationalism that took over. And so the whites who were there were actually forced out of the movements, which was a really huge deal, not only from an emotional standpoint, but also financially. Many of the white supporters were also forced out. And we had the opportunity at the 25th anniversary that was held at St. John's of Divines and then over at
Queens
College.
Yes.
To actually be there for the first reunion of all those folks who had been in Mississippi in that summer. And that was in 1994, I guess. And at that point, this was the first time many of those folks had come back together and in each other's presence. Had an opportunity to talk about that split. And in the morning, we were actually there, and we were doing some music to sort of prepare the ground, and then as
Rosa Parks was there, and we
yeah.
got to introduce her to the group.
Wow.
Yeah, that was.
But some of the conversations that we really have had over the course of time, and certainly the conversations that were had that day, were from that great break.
Oh, I bet.
And it was a very, very painful day. James Farmer was there. And he said specifically, one of the reasons he showed up was because that rift and that decision had broken his heart for all those years. And he'd had no way within the context of the people who were there to really discuss, talk about it, and unburden his heart, which he did that afternoon. It was such a dynamic afternoon that they really had to just take the program that they had and throw it out the window. And they just shifted everything. And we did a lot of singing, and they did a lot of talking, and we did oral histories, and But really, that is the nature of struggle in so many ways. Allies finding ways to come together and then finding places that they come apart. The beauty of our friendship and our relationship has been that we have at times weathered some storms and then found ways to reconnect.
I'm not going away. That would be the stupidest thing I could do, give up on these guys.
But as Jonathan became the rabbi in Woodstock, and that was only an hour from our home, that gave us access to have a relationship with that community. And to come in, and it really always is about education, and it's about access. And
So one of the things that we've tried to do in our congregation then, based on what I'd learned from you, was build relationships with some of the primarily black congregations nearby in Kingston, and find common cause. And we've been working with the New Progressive Baptist Church, a wonderful pastor named Modelli Clark, what a guy, making friends and working together on the current issue, which is mass incarceration of people of color. And trying to find ways, again, where we can make common cause. And the key, and you all know this already, is the relationships that we build, the real relationships we build. So it means showing up at the, it meant me showing up on the street corner in Kingston a few weeks ago after the Eric Garner decision, because Modelli was going to be there. So I'm going to be there. I don't actually feel like doing that. I don't want to stand on a street corner, wave my arms. It's not my thing. But for the friendship, I have to keep my priorities clear. That was I'm always learning.
And we keep finding that, yes, I know sometimes you just go.
One of the other projects we did with through your friendship with Modelli Clark was to do a benefit to raise money for.
It was a reentry program.
Reentry program
for convicts, yeah.
And in that particular endeavor, we were able to call on a friend who
in
we thought might be
2010.
interested. And so we called up Pete, and we said, here's what we're doing. And it was a great day because he said, well, what time is it? And we said, well, actually, it's going to be in the late afternoon.
And this was like Martin Luther King Day.
It was
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, yeah.
So he said, well, I'm doing a church at 8, and then I'm doing another church at 10. And I have a possibility of doing a church at noon.
He's 90 years old.
And I think I'm supposed to speak to well, I'll work it out.
He was there. He was there. We had 700 people there. It was amazing. It was amazing. You know, I've often thought of Martin Luther King as my rabbi. Because he took my sacred texts. When he says, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, that's from the prophet Amos in the Old Testament. And when you read the whole passage, boy, Amos was preaching. You know, he said, spare me your prayers and offerings, but let justice roll down like water and righteousness like mighty. When he says, and the valleys shall be made high and the mountains shall be made low, and everyone will see the glory of the Lord together in his I Have a Dream speech, he's quoting Isaiah. Now those texts were impenetrable to me as a young American Jew. It's like, and then thanks to my Rabbi Martin Luther King, I found my way back to my own tradition. It's one of the beautiful gifts I've received by being immersed in this.
And so we started singing some other songs together.
Yes, what should we do?
Oh, probably We Shall Overcome. And Ani.
We found out that our process was, we're thinking about We Shall Overcome. And I said, you know, and this is what I was, there's a Hebrew song that says the same thing. Anima Amin is a medieval credo of the Jews. I believe with a complete faith in the coming of the Messiah, which in that sense means an era of peace and justice. And even though it may be delayed, I will still believe. That's the Hebrew. And I thought, that's an awful lot like We Shall Overcome. Jews actually, on their way to the gas chambers, sang that as their last act of spiritual resistance. And so we said, those songs belong together.
Showed up.
And We Shall Overcome, starting off in the spirituals tradition and then coming up through the labor movement in the early 1900s and then continuing to come on. You know, songs grow, and we were talking about this last night, layers keep being added to songs and ways that we sing together.
Anima Amin, Anima Amin, Anima Amin, Ve'emuna Shlema. Change the key.
Excuse us, yes. Because your two friends over here are going to come and see you. Okay.
That sounds right.
No, it's not.
So, wait a minute, talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
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 He worked it out.
Okay.
I know what I meant to do.
Okay. Yeah, put that cape away.
Well, I can remember the words to the poem, so you can forget that. Anima Amin, Anima Amin, Anima Amin, Ve'emuna Shlema, Ve'emuna Shlema, Beviat HaMashiach, Beviat HaMashiach, Anima Amin, Ve'atalti she'yitmamea, im
they're starting to do stuff. When you think about the civil rights movement, there aren't that many rituals that come out of it, but definitely one of the ritual actions is to be holding on to the person next to you. And of course, yes indeed, yes. Mommy, I need mommy, I need mommy. Bebula sheba, bebula sheba. Baby, hamashia, baby, hamashia, mommy, mommy. Beamami, sheikha meya, in kolze, mommy, mommy. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I know that I do believe we shall overcome someday. All of us together now. All of us together. All of us together. All of us together now. Oh, deep in my heart, I know that I do believe we shall overcome someday. All right, let's say, welcome back to Hebrew. All right, Ani Mami. Ani Mami. Ani Mami. Ani Mami.
I still believe.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome right now. Oh, deep in my heart, oh, that I do believe we shall overcome right now. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome right now. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome right now. You can have a seat. We've got a few more minutes, and if you have any questions or comments
Yeah, well,
or
how about
thoughts.
this? Turn to the person next to you. Just tell what are you thinking?
Yeah, what's up?
What's going
Don't
on?
leave anybody out. Make it 3.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I'll be alright someday. So what do you think?
Yeah. What do you think? And it gets quiet. Yes.
Deanna and I were talking about our experiences in Latin America with the British theology and how in the people that we were accompanying, They felt the people of Exodus were their people.
Yeah.
And the God that cared about freedom was with them in their struggle for freedom.
Yes, indeed.
King said in one of his entries, I felt like I had cosmic companionship. I love that phrase. Because it wasn't personal. You know, King didn't speak much in personal divine terms, but he talked about this sense of cosmic companionship.
And the term liberation theology really came about in the 1960s, but the spirituals were liberation theology. You know, and there have been many groups of
And
people
I
that
say
have
that the holiday of Passover is liberation.
Absolutely. So, yes.
I'm hardly a religious Jew. My rare example is an understatement. But I really felt moved hearing the Hebrew juxtaposition. And I felt more at peace with my religious roots than I have in a long time. It made me think that I wish that there was less jihad and more jubilee.
Less jihad and more jubilee. Can I say something about that? Yes. I mean, my rabbinate has been all about saying, you know, fortunately, there's no one who gets to tell me how to be Jewish. You know, and so I'm carving my own path with like-minded friends who say, no, this is the way I want to take Judaism into the future. The first line I sang at the very beginning is from the Passover Haggadah, is the central line in the Haggadah. It says, B'chol dor v'dor, in every generation, chayav adam l'rosh, each person must view themselves as personally having gone from slavery to liberation. And the rest of the line is, anyone who expands upon the story is praiseworthy. That's the instruction, not to make it a dead letter. So, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I think you got, I don't know if the word is distracted, but you were starting to talk about Passover and Arthur, and that Dr. Kim was going to go to Rabbi Heschel's Passover said, I'm nervous. And so of course what he did that year, and I'm old enough to have been involved, and I was South, what he did that year was he wrote something that went out on mimeograph to a lot of people and then eventually became published. He had a Freedom Seder in which he explicitly, now implicitly, all the years of growing up, I came from a secular, they called it secular, but it's not. It was a Yiddish-speaking Jewish community that would have been Reconstructionist if it had existed. Because what it was trying to do was take the ethics out and so forth. So even though we were supposedly secular, and there were a lot of Jews that were called secular, they really weren't secular in the sense of secular having no religion. They just didn't go to mainstream organizations. And so they had these seders for years where they connected to the black struggle and saw, because it had been going on in Europe, it's not just since Egypt. So Arthur wrote this thing that explicitly connected it to the contemporary times.
That's the rest of the story,
And,
that's
yeah,
right.
and then it became published, and then he went beyond that and wrote Children of Abraham, so it's not just about blacks and Jews, it's also about Palestinians and Jews.
It's about Muslims, Jews, and Christians is
Right.
really
Muslims-
where he's gone in recent years.
And
yes.
lots of us use it, but it's the kind of thing where you can tear it apart, and I just want people here to know who don't know that it's a tradition to cut and paste your own Seder and reinvent it every year.
There's even a website for it now.
Really? Of course.
It's like build your own Passover
And you
Seder.
probably have to, and a Dropbox, and you probably have to pay, but like many people.
No, you don't.
It's free.
Oh, well, used to be a leche woman would help you breastfeed. Now you have to pay a lactation consultant. So I figured. But what's been so exciting is, and what made it dead, and I think it's not just Judaism, I think a lot of religion becomes dead because it just becomes sort of ritualized to the
That's
point
right.
there's no life.
That's right.
And after Arthur, so many people who had walked away from Judaism and thought it was just ritual realized that it was about now, it was about me, which is, as you say, traditionally it says, come and make this yours in every generation. And it's probably why it's the most popular holiday.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean, what was interesting was that he not only wrote it and mimeographed it, but he got together, I think the first time they did that Seder after 1968, there were probably 700 or 800 people that gathered. And
Yes.
then they,
So-
they continued to gather, and I think they wound up doing it in a church basement because they needed to, in Washington D.C. And I can't remember the name of the church, but I did for my dissertation, I did some study of that.
You did.
Yeah,
Cool.
and then got together with, Art Wasco was.
Anyway, I just want to make sure that we
We
didn't
finished the
forget
story.
that, because we're coming up on Passover.
That's right.
And we can all do it, and everybody's entitled.
That's right.
It's a Christian text too, after all. The
right.
Christians took
That's
on
right.
the Old Testament.
Yes, Art, after his epiphany in Washington, watching the city burning, he dashed off this new Passover Seder he called the Freedom Seder. And it took off. It became a new model for how we can approach the holiday, yeah.
And it helped us deal with our feelings about Dr. King's death.
Yes, he did, yes. I love Art.
Other thoughts, feelings, questions, answers? Yes.
Well, this is interesting. I have Asperger's, so the lights were bothering me a little, and I didn't want to shut my eyes, so I was focusing on the bookcase behind you. And
We'll repeat it.
I was focusing on the bookcase behind you, and your center frame is like the unknown terrorist. And over here you've got revolution, but down here in the corner you've got light.
This magazine is Light. This is American Revolution. In the middle here is the Time Person of the Year, the Ebola fighters.
Civil rights.
Oh yes, here's civil rights.
Basketball one up there too.
Basketball is everywhere.
Well, what do you usually say to, what is it?
Life is a metaphor for basketball.
Yeah, Phil Jackson would say to us, life is a metaphor for basketball.
Here and then here.
I had a quick question about, you brought up this tasty cake
Yes.
thing, and I was wondering, was it successful?
Yeah.
It was successful. Painfully successful. But it did. It taught us, I mean, those of you who are not from Philadelphia have no idea. Think of Hostess Twinkies and then go universe times 10. It is so deeply ingrained in the Philadelphia community, Tasty Cake. There's one factory, and they have all these things, and really it was a call to arms. But it was successful. They hired black workers, they hired black drivers, and they changed the company. Reverend Leon Sullivan also was the very first African American on a corporate board. I believe Coca-Cola was his first, Chrysler was the second. He was the one who lobbied and badgered and advocated for divestiture in South Africa
Right.
of those corporations.
And the Sullivan principles are named after him.
So,
Yes, now you can. When we first moved up into upstate New York, we had to bring them with us across state lines.
it was dangerous business. Yes, here and then back then.
I hope if you think it's off topic, don't answer, but what did you think about the fact that there was no civil rights music at all in the movie Selma until the last few minutes?
I thought it was unfortunate. I thought that the music that was in the movie was evocative. I thought that it was in the frame of the civil rights songs. And I understand in contemporary music why they did that. I think it was a poor choice.
They're asking why. Can you answer that quickly?
Why? Oh, because there was all this opportunity for merchandising and marketing, and so they like to invite contemporary artists to fashion music that they can then sell as their own. It's another. It is what it is. And many times directors feel that those songs, they don't have the same connection to those songs and to what those songs did in the movement. So, there were many things about the movie that do not, I don't get off on this, but there are many things about the movie that do not truly honor the history and the legacy. I think they do a wonderful job of framing it, and the acting is brilliant and all of that. But, the music often, that happens often in the industry. You say, let's go get John Legend, or let's get this person to do our music. And those people generally are not steeped in the songs and in the music. And so they think, well, this is an opportunity for me. And they may listen to it and they say, I'm going to write music and write a song.
Now we're going to talk more about that in the plenary. So we will.
Question back here?
Okay, so probably last one, because then we're going to have to take a short break, because I think the
Yeah.
plenary starts at 5.
It does, and we're going to be late because we're late. Yes.
I totally agree with you about the music and the next generation.
A little louder.
But the people who, there's a whole generation of people who are listening to that music and that movie, it's making a difference for them. It's a change.
Yeah.
So honoring
Right.
and bringing folks in, teaching what we know and sharing that.
All right, save it for the plenary. That's where we're going.
Right now,
Okay.
the best moment in this today,
Uh-huh.
this session, was when we began singing Let My People Go. And I felt like this weaving of the fabric of our lives and history and culture together in a way. I would really like to have a deeper discussion about African American and Jewish American culture. I want to talk about when Irish became white, when Jewish became white.
Right.
Right?
Jews weren't white when they came to this country. It's a really important
The
conversation.
next generation of folks. So thank you so much for sharing this. It was just
Oh, thank you.
So, thank you. So when it comes time to write down, what we're going to talk about for, what we'll all talk about together for next PMN, could you please make sure that
That's a rich
My
one.
name is Elise, and I will make sure I put it on my evaluation.
Straight up, Elise.
yes, and then if other people, if you're interested in that topic too, would you also put that on your evaluation so people see it in lots of different ways? Because yes, thank you.
So-
And then please come to the plenary.
Yes.
Now, what do you want to say?
Ben just gave me the word. So the plenary starts at 5:15 in the auditorium right next door. And Kim and Reggie will have to scoot to do a sound check. And before you go, everybody, do you want to say a word about what you're doing in the plenary?
No.
No. Okay. Just to cast your eyes upon them is sufficient.
Well, no. Actually, it's going to, at least you gave us a good bridge, because we're going to be talking and thinking together about ways that we can reach out as an incredible community, and ways that we can also help not only the traditional and the older songs to reach out, but to help younger people
Oh, good.
take
Okay.
songs that they are already thinking about and singing them, and to move them from being topical and political, but songs with a performer and an audience, to songs with a performer, song leader, and people marching in the street.
Oh.
We're also going to talk a little bit about reconnecting ourselves to the mission of our passion to the music and to the legacy of that history.
Passion.
So, okay, so we'll see you
And
hopefully
may
next
I-
door if you want to come.
In
Come on
15
up.
minutes, and may I just thank you for allowing me to share this time with them, with you all.